Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P. Kriston H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
What up, guys? We are live here. It is Wednesday, April 29th, live here on the Rundown Live, rundownlive.com. Mike Pachesney, Kriston Harris. And we have a guest tonight, Kriston. A pretty cool guest.
Sure do. Author and radio show host Steve Quayle joins us tonight to talk Giants in his upcoming book, Genesis Giants Part 2. I mean, there's just so much to talk about with him tonight. I mean, he's a researcher in so many riveting subjects. It should be an information-packed show, that's for sure.
Well,
he's well-versed in so many things.
It is ancient history and UFOs and giants, and we love talking about that stuff around here.
Well, and it's cryptozoology and truth in history, and that is something we stand for here at the Rundown Live. We do a lot of that. We think history is very important for you to understand and learn. If you don't understand the true history, then you're going to be pretty lost your entire life. You're going to be one of those sheeple, as we call them.
Yes, that's what we like to call the misinformed, right? Because it's not necessarily that they are uninformed, they're just misinformed, because a lot of them are very educated.
Well, they sure are. Just educated in things such as your local sports team, or maybe your reality TV show that is popular. But I think a majority of the public doesn't even know, their Bill of Rights or their constitutional rights, which I find interesting. I saw that one Mark Dice video where he went, to Harvard, and he was asking people if they could name the Second or Third or Fourth Amendment, and people were having trouble, and they're there for law and things of that nature. It's just interesting to see how far people have gone from reality. So
yes, classism. It's so wonderful. But you know what? We're gonna stay away from all the politics, I think, tonight, and really talk about hidden history, because we've dived right into this before, Kriston. We kind of want to ask Steve what the heck's going on, and why is all this stuff even being hidden from us?
Well, and that's just it. And at what point will researchers and scientists unearth a giant human skeleton? Or, it might have to be a joint thing when businesses or private interests combine with scientists in order to prove this. But I'm curious to see when he thinks that giant human skeleton will be unveiled. We can ask him that a little later. But guys, if you haven't had a chance to yet, check out therundownlive.com. We have new information up there daily. Share our information on your Facebook, your Twitter, the different social media networks that are out there. That helps us beat those evil algorithms they put in place. Follow us and let your friends know to tune in right now. Check out therundownlive.com. You can also get in the chat by just putting /live to the end of that, and you can actually chat with Mike and I, and usually most of our guests, if they are on via Skype. So do get in the chat. It's one of the cool ways we put out there for you guys to contact us and be involved in the program. Also, guys, if you're interested in supporting us, check out Private Internet Access. That's how we pay the bills around here. Private Internet Access is a banner on our website. The software allows you to surf the internet anonymously, check your emails, download, conversate, do cool things like avoid Reddit bans and video game bans. It's $39.95, covers 5 computers, guys. Part of that purchase supports what we do here, and we are listener supported, 100% fueled by you guys. So we want to thank you guys who have been making those purchases and the donations. So sign up. You can sign up to donate weekly, monthly, or whenever you guys feel like contributing to the cause. Support media. That helps us bring you truth in media. So thank you guys out there. Also, I want to say, if you like to listen to us live, there's no better way than checking us out on the TuneIn Radio app. That's a free app for your cell phone or tablet. You just go to your local app store and type in TuneIn Radio, and then you can search for us, The Rundown Live, and follow us on there. It's not a bad deal. It's a great product. And it's a great way to get all the other great broadcasters here on Truth Frequency Denver 90.7 FM. They do a great job. Popeye, Phoenix Rising, Joe Joseph. There's just so many to mention. So check out Truth Frequency Radio as well. If you can't catch us live, there's no better way than the Rundown Live app. That's right. We put out a free app for you guys. The app allows you to download all our past podcasts, listen to them at your convenience, and you can actually email Mike and I directly from the app. So check that out. Go to your Google App Store, your iPhone App Store, your iTunes Store, and or your Amazon.com store. Let us know what you think by rating it. Check it out. I want to thank our syndication tonight, FPRN Radio, Liberty Talk FM, Liberty Movement Radio, Truth Frequency Denver 90.7 FM, and we are now brought to you by All Time Conspiracies on YouTube. Those guys are machines. Their videos get ridiculous amount of views, so we're very happy to have them on board. And you can find just about every Rundown Live or limited edition DAP Mystery School program on YouTube and our app, so check that out as well.
Sounds good, Kristan. I know it's a lot of stuff, but we got to go through it. You know, it's a daily thing around here.
Well, yeah, and obviously if you guys want to know more about that, you can go to our website and just search private internet access and all that interesting stuff in the search bar. But yeah, tonight is going to be an interesting show. Everyone knows I'm a big advocate for truth and history, and we've talked giants many times before in the past. I personally have read Steve Quayle's book, Genesis Giants, and a couple of his other books, which are very interesting, tying in many different subjects. He is well-versed in ancient history. He's the author of many informational books on DNA and esoteric history and disclosure. So I think that tonight will be a fantastic interview with Steve. I know that Steve has inspired me to do my esoteric research in history and read books. I read the book of Enoch because of his writing, and I found many amazing things and learned many amazing things from the esoteric books of the Bible, such as the book of Giants, such as the book of Enoch, such as the books of Jasher. And I believe author Steve Quayle now joins us. Steve, how are you doing this evening?
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you gentlemen tonight for the time we have together and to talk about obviously my favorite subject, because as we're dealing with all the things strange that used to be denied, ridiculed, scorned, and kind of thrown to the trash heap of just science fiction, now people are finding out there's way more going on than they ever imagined. And interestingly enough, when you're dealing with biblical giants, you're dealing with the entire history of the world. There is no place in 43 years of studying this, writing about it, literally thousands upon thousands of footnotes, research notes, etc. There is no place that does not have a history of giants that I've been able to find. It doesn't matter if it's in the uttermost parts of the South Pacific, for instance, down in everything from Indonesia to the Solomon Islands, of which even World War II legends were dictated during that day of actual giants being seen. So the book of Enoch, which you mentioned, and also the book of Giants, we should tell your listeners, are the Dead Sea Scrolls. So what I've done is researched and put together under, one rather large volume, a lot of the history, a lot of the myth and legend, but a lot of the fascinating tie-in with the Bible, God's Word, and I make no apologies for the Bible or for the book of Genesis. Now, in Genesis chapter 6, it talked about the angels that kept not their first estate. Those are angels that we know today in the common vernacular as fallen angels. The book of Jude talks about a specific group of fallen angels that basically interdicted the human race by having sex with females. Now, I want to make something clear to everybody. Every single myth and legend, in my opinion, and listen a little bit into this because I think you'll find it fascinating, goes back to the idea that the gods in a polygamous and a polytheistic universe had sex with earth women, from which arrived or which produced the mighty men of renown. People like Hercules and people like the Og, king of Bashan. When Joshua and Caleb and the spies went into the promised land, they stated, we were as grasshoppers in their eyes, and so we were in ours. So the fascinating thing about the whole history of giants throughout the recorded history of mankind is fascinating. And this isn't like Shrek, the cartoon ogre. We're not talking about friendly giants. We're talking about some very nefarious creatures. It may interest your listeners to know that by the grace of God, I was fortunate enough to interview an actual pilot who thought that I was full of you-know-what, listened to me on Coast to Coast, and contacted me because he was tasked with flying into Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan in the year 2005 and literally taking out a dead giant somewhere around between 9 and 12 feet, and basically had red hair, 6 fingers, 6 toes, that had killed an entire team of special forces guys looking for the Taliban in the caves of Afghanistan. Well, one thing led to another. The government had to send in a specialized team that deals with these sort of creatures, and obviously everything was top secret, but the pilot himself sent me a letter, which, by the way, is available in my book, Long Walkers, and you probably heard that interview. I'm not sure, Chris or Mike, if you heard it. Yeah, but it's one of the most fascinating things. So to tell everybody and to prove my point, that gentleman came into my office, the pilot, with all of his, I've not been in the military, but all the correct military, documents showing who he was. And it's fascinating because ever since that time, in 2005, there's been more and more revelation. Now, interestingly enough, when we started the Iraqi war, we were looking for the tomb of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh, is the oldest epic known to mankind that's yet been found. Gilgamesh was reported to be half man, half God. In other words, he had an earthly mother and a fallen angel father. And it's fascinating because as you do talk radio, as I've done for 25 years, there's a lot of people that want to make their, I guess you'd say, consciences clean and talk about all the cover-up that's gone on. Now, why is this important? Because as a Christian, I believe we're in the days of Noah. And most people just equate the days of Noah with an ark, some animals, and a flood. But it's way different than that. It was what caused the God of heaven, who originally created mankind in his image and likeness, to have to destroy pretty much the entire human race with the exception of 8 souls. And when the Bible says that Noah was perfect in his generation, that means there was no genetic corruption. So, gentlemen, I propose, and I have been warning and warning and warning, we're in the days of Noah. Now science is taking license. They're becoming God. They're promising everybody can live forever.
Transhumanism.
That's bottom line. And that's, whether it's singularity, transhumanism, the merging of men and machines. Now we're dealing with the robot apocalypse. We're dealing with artificial intelligence being greater than the human intelligence that builds it. And I believe these are the days that Jesus spoke of when he said if these days wouldn't be shortened, there would be no flesh left alive.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting you mentioned all that. I also would like to point out that there's a ton of megalithic structures out there that really cannot be, explained by common engineering, or that man was a dumb ape, several thousand years ago. They have countless of structures underneath the Mediterranean Sea. Who knows how many at the bottom of the ocean. And there's some of these things are pretty hard to explain. Who else might have made these things other than an advanced race that one time colonized this planet? So I think that's.
But I want to make it, But I want to make it clear that they didn't come from the stars as we know them. Probably the greatest difference between me and Eric von Daniken and Zacharias Sitchin and all of the ancient alien astronaut theory is this. Is that the fallen angels were able to take on the form of humanity to basically have sex with earth women, and the fallen angels obviously had knowledge. Now, I just sent an expedition for 21 days to Peru and Bolivia to some of the most awesome megalithic and unusual structures in the world. everybody who's watched television on the Ancient Alien series has seen these. But interestingly enough, Timothy Alberino, who's the expedition leader, and if people want to kind of get some really good background, they can go on my website, Steve Quayle, QUAYLE.com, and go over to the right-hand side and watch the Timothy Alberino analysis. Suffice it to say, you guys, that Bolivia announced a whole new archaeological find of pyramids under the ground. Now, this is important because pyramidal structures are all over the world. There are even pyramids in Wisconsin. There are even pyramids in the Great Lakes. There are pyramids that have been detailed all over the planet. In other words, if you were to ask me what's the common geometric shape that links to a supernatural presence in the earth, it would be the pyramids. So when Tim and his film crew, and by the way, we're going to have this up on my website pretty soon, let's say by the 15th, what they found was an engineer who, for the record, was not a Christian, but had been studying the way that the ancients, and he knew about the giants, the pre-Aztec, the pre-Inca, and the pre-Mayan time period, that they were changing the, if you will, atomic particles that obviously comprise everything, but in the megaliths, the giant stones, and literally turning them liquid. And if you might follow this, they were being poured into the crevasses of each other. That's why you can't even put a razor blade through some of them. So basically, it would be called harmonic recombination. Now, this stuff will sound wild to most people, but no one has ever explained how this stuff exists, especially mainstream archaeologists, or how the pyramids are built. I categorically reject that Hebrew slaves built the pyramids. And most people who are familiar with the investigators know that it's not, whether it's Robert Bauval or Graham Hancock or Robert Schoch or all these guys that are quoted as experts, and they really are. The thing that's different is they cannot explain these structures from 4,000 years BC. Knowledge didn't come out, like you say. It wasn't monkey A and monkey B monkeying around, and all of a sudden two coconuts fell from the tree and created fission or fusion, okay? So what I'm saying is mankind, there's a supernatural burst of intelligence on the planet. And what you just referred to, Kristan, or Mike, I forget which one of you was talking about the Book of Enoch. Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants are fascinating. They're called pseudepigraphal works. They are not the same as Scripture, but even the New Testament refers to the Book of Enoch. Now, we have fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and by the way, the Dead Sea Scrolls in the caves of Qumran are exactly where a lot of the Old Testament was handwritten by the scribes, and that's how we know that we've got a true, quote, Word of God and the true words of the prophets. So let me make this clear, and I think people will understand. Even now in the Vatican, Tom Horn and Chris Putnam have interviewed some of the most brilliant scientific minds in the world associated with the Vatican, and they're talking about the days of a coming alien savior. Now, by alien in their language, they mean someone from outer space who lives on another planet, and they believe in panspermia. That's just a fancy word that the aliens created us by sprinkling their DNA on Earth, and evolutionary forces, with a lot of help from them, became the human race. Well, that stands contrary to everything I believe. It stands contrary to the history. And what's fascinating is the intelligence and the structures associated with them, the megaliths. And these are some of the hugest buildings in the world, whether it's at Persepolis, Baalbek in Lebanon, some of the places now that have been uncovered in Russia, former Russia. These things are so magnificently huge that there's no modern way to move stones like that to this day. So when I said Genesis 6 giants, master builders of prehistoric and contemporary society, I'm just telling you, there's a lot of hidden knowledge, and there's a lot of people that keep the knowledge. So if you control the past, you can dictate the future. And the reason why people don't want to accept the biblical account, because they've followed and swallowed the evolutionary lie until the time that science takes change. You guys are watching it. Now they're talking about water on Mars, may have been water on the moon. Well, good night. Lovell talked about that, 100 years ago. How did Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels, know that the two names of Mars's moons were Phobos and Deimos, which means obviously demon and fear. So what's fascinating is that in the book of Daniel, we're told that all this knowledge is going to increase, and it's going to be released in the last days. And gentlemen, I propose and put it forth with no apologies, we are living in some of the most perilous times, which brings us to Shiva. So we were talking before we went on the radio that as the CERN, and that's just an acronym for the French Nuclear Research Council on the European Research Nucléaire, and I'm not a French-speaking person, but let's just call it the French Center for Nuclear Research, as pretty much looking for the Higgs boson particle, the God particle. But what's interesting is their patron demon is Shiva. Shiva is the destroyer of worlds, the cosmic dance of destruction and recreation. And what's fascinating in this Kathmandu earthquake that just happened several days ago that was so drastic, the very first thing to tumble was the giant temple of Shiva. Now, I don't believe that's coincidence, and people are interested in CERN. I believe that some of the guys and a former lady friend of mine, Sue Bradley, who's now passed away, wrote some of the most pressing, insightful, and I would believe a revelatory understanding of what CERN's all about. And so literally, that's why I say the gates of hell are opening. And guess what? Jesus said that the gates of hell would not prevail against his church. Jesus wasn't using metaphors of no relevance. Every single, and I've done my homework, so I challenge anybody. If they want to learn about this stuff, they can go to my website. They can get my book, Genesis 6 Giants. Of course, I'm saying that that's where I've focused all my history. The book Little Creatures, The Gates of Hell Are Opening, that was the last book I wrote prior to putting forth a new version of Genesis 6. And by the way, you guys, people send me emails from all over the world saying, now it makes sense. And so I think that that's a great thing when people can understand that God wasn't arbitrary when he told the children of Israel to go in and kill everybody in the land of the Canaanites, because they weren't even normal human beings. In the book of Genesis, everything God created was after its likeness and kind, and God said it was good. But the point being is that the devil has always tried to interfere to the point of bringing the end of humanity as we know it. And I think when Jesus said, except the days be shortened, there'd be no flesh left alive, yet for the elect's sake, those days are being shortened. And we all hear what's going on a daily basis, whether it's earthquakes, whether it's Jade Helm, whether it's martial law, whether it's the complete destruction of U.S. military, whether it's this, whether it's that. It's war in the Persian Gulf, war with Russia asserting its strategic military power, China having overtaken the West and the amount of gold it holds. All these things, interestingly enough, are tied together, and I believe it's tied together by a supernatural intelligence making war against the living God and against Jesus Christ. And I can, obviously spend 9,000 hours on talk radio talking about that, which, by the way, I have spent that long over the years. But the point being is that this is so relevant to today, and there's amazing discoveries being found, and I think people are going to be blown away when they see our presentation. For instance, Tim and the film crew stayed at a place called Amaramuru. I may be killing the name, but it's a known Stargate. And while they were there, listen to this, there wasn't any rain, there wasn't any storm, but they had set up cameras and some special equipment to watch what happened at the gate at night. Now, this is what's known all over the world as just one example of the Stargate. And the thing that's fascinating, they got hit with such a strange lightning and hailstorm that literally even the natives have never seen it come that fast, that furious. But imagine this, it wasn't a general hailstorm, it was a pinpoint hailstorm. So what I maintain out of that is obviously there are things happening in the supernatural realm that are soon to manifest in the physical realm, and that's when men's hearts are going to fail them for fear of looking after those things coming upon the earth.
Yeah, when you say Stargates, I think Project Pegasus. I think things of that nature.
Well, as Stargates, the Native Americans are way ahead of most people in the world. Let me refer you to a study, Native American Sacred Sites in the Department of Defense, and this was written by Richard Stoffel and submitted to the U.S. military. And basically, what it is, and this will be interesting to everybody, when you see spirals in the petroglyphs, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in Tiwanaku, where Tim and his crew were, they were also in a place called Sacsayana and Ollantaytambo. Those are words that are hard for me to say, but easy to see. These are the things you see in South America that are just huge walls with rocks that are so tightly put together that they can't put a piece of paper through it. But what's fascinating, going back to Amaramuru, is that before that all happened, they had taken and watched on film the local, I guess you would have said they were probably Incan priest leftovers, trying to open the gate by using sound. In other words, they were using specific bowls and running a metal, if you will, kind of like a honey dipper around it, creating frequencies. And so when you look at this is the same thing that the Native Americans talk about through the desert Southwest. This is the same thing that the Aboriginals, so all over the world, when you see a spiral, remember the infamous Norway spiral?
Yeah. Steve, we're coming across a break here.
Okay.
I think the spiral is very important. It's very interesting. I've seen it with, the Fibonacci sequence and so many other things. But I want to thank all our listeners. Steve Quayle will be joining us here back in the second half. We'll probably get into a bunch of interesting topics again. So you guys stay tuned. Thank you for listening to the RundownLive.com.
Chris and Sheree Gio here, founders of Truth Frequency Radio. We just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for making TFR the biggest and the best independent radio station out there.
When we first entered the alternative media scene in 2009, we were really taken aback by the amount of infighting, backbiting, fear-based reporting, and ego-driven personalities. That's when we knew we had to set ourselves apart and set a new standard in broadcasting. And thus, TFR was conceived as a listener-supported station with no corporate or outside influence and limited commercial interruptions.
You can support our efforts by signing up for a VIP membership at truthfrequencyradio.com/sign-up or by making a donation at truthfrequencyradio.com/donate.
For less than $4 a month, you can ensure that TFR continues broadcasting for years to come. Real people, real radio.
Wherever you are, make it TFR.
A sudden change in the wind. The day grows dark as ominous clouds move in and lightning begins to carve arcs in the sky. And you realize you are not prepared.
I am telling you to take cover.
The number of intense storms is increasing exponentially in the U.S. Tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, and droughts are happening with greater magnitude and frequency. If you are choosing to rely on the government to save you,
And no one's coming to help them.
you could be dead wrong. The first step towards self-reliance in the face of disaster is a visit to MyPatriotSupply.com. There you'll find the absolute best prices on storable foods, non-GMO seeds, emergency water filtration devices, and so much more. All orders over $49 qualify for free shipping in the lower 48. Visit us online or call 866-229-0927. That's 866-229-0927 and speak to one of our preparedness advisors today. Remember, before it's time to survive, it's time to prepare. MyPatriotSupply.com. Nutritious food is real body armor. It builds muscle, burns fat, fat, improves digestion, and feeds the entire body the nutrients it needs. Did you know the U.S. government banned the hemp plant from growing in the United States and classified it as a Schedule I drug to hide it behind the marijuana plant? People have been confused about this plant for over 80 years, and many still don't know what hemp is. So now you know hemp is not marijuana, and marijuana is not hemp. They are different varieties of the same species. HempUSA.org wants the world to know these basic facts and to help people understand that hemp protein powder is the best kept health secret you need to know about. Remember, hemp protein powder contains 53% protein, is gluten-free, anti-inflammatory, non-GMO, and is loaded with nutrients. Call 888-910-4367, 888-910-4367, and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, and that all men are created equal.
The Freedom Link with Joe Joseph, Monday through Friday on True Frequency Radio. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com. Mike P. Kriston H. The Rundown, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Check out therundownlive.com.
The rundown.
TheRundownLive.com. We're here with researcher and author Stephen Quayle. We were talking a little bit about ancient history and things of that nature, the Great Plan as we call it, or I call it anyways. And, a recent hot topic, at least on foreign giant research, I've been reading a lot about this area called Sardinia and how there may be a Vatican cover up there. I wonder how much the Vatican actually knows about giants, Steve.
Well, first of all, they know everything because, 3 months ago, I think we sent an expedition over to Sardinia. We had Italian interpreters, very bright people there, and we interviewed the older people. When I say older, 75 to 85-year-olds, who would talk about all the bones that are in Sardinia that have been unearthed up to, they even remember them as high as 18 feet tall. Most people won't even spend the time to do the research to see this isn't nonsense. This is absolutely chronicled through history. And the deal is we'll be having these interviews in one of our half-hour specials. But the gist of it is, whether it was in Sardinia, they were followed by, quote, Vatican representatives, so much so that some of the elderly people refused to go on camera. They would turn their back to the camera because they were afraid of repercussions. Fast forward to 23 days ago now, whatever, when Tim and Vinny and Benny, that's the guys' first names, were down in both Peru and Bolivia. When they went into Bolivia, by the way, you guys, the Bolivian government has become incredibly hostile to Americans, incredibly hostile. And everything was roped off, and they said the only way you could liken the archaeological sites there when they were there was a Nazi, here's their word, prison camp, okay? And now even at some of the former giant megaliths, it's in different parts of Peru, especially around Cusco, everything seems to be controlled, and anything that's related to the giants immediately brings in the Vatican. Now, why was that? Well, here's why giants have been hidden in history. I think here's the million-dollar answer. The Smithsonian cover-up, too, and I really cover the Smithsonian cover-up. And one of
Rockefeller Foundation does that, right? The Smithsonian?
Well, it even predates the Rockefellers, okay? It goes back to the international, you're going to love this, Egyptian Brotherhood, but not the Egyptian Brotherhood that you think of terrorists in the Middle East.
Masonic.
This goes back to the pharaonic line of control of history. obviously the Vatican and its different emissaries have controlled real history. First of all, when you're dealing with biblical giants and you've got bones and you've got armor and you've got swords, you can go and look it up. You've got axes that you'd have to be 16 feet tall to wield the axes. When you've got Goliath, whose just his spear alone was heavier than a weaver's beam, and you've got all of the different stories. And what's interesting is that the ancient historians weren't writing for the Sci-Fi Channel, so they were recording what they saw. They were taking notes, and I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Berosus the Persian, Herodotus the Egyptian, Diodorus, all of these guys that are the most famous historians in history, actual chroniclers of events in their day, all deal with this. The early church fathers deal with this. Well, the Catholic Church couldn't have that, because when people start believing that basically the Genesis account in Genesis chapter 6, and by the way, our production company is called Gen 6 Productions, because to me, Genesis 6 is the Rosetta Stone for explaining science, technology, architecture, and the immediate introduction of, I would say, supernatural wisdom. You cannot tell people on Earth how bodies in the heavens or orbital paths and stuff that's measured in light years away, how it all works. For instance, the dog star Sirius, the Pleiades, which is mentioned in the book of Job, Arcturus, and all these different ancient terms for the planetary heavenly bodies. I can tell you that, and people can go look this up, the map of the Creator is, 600,000 years old. The Sumerian Table of Kings goes back 250,000 years or more. Now, this is prior to Adam and Eve, okay? That's what I want people to understand. When you look at the steles and you look at all of the stone carvings and all the paintings and everything else that archaeologists turn up in the Middle East, you're always seeing figures sitting or being seated on thrones with a normal-sized guy coming up to their knee. You've seen that. That's one of the most famous Babylonian or Sumerian stone carvings that anybody's ever seen. So the gist of it is the reason this is covered up is because it points to the accuracy of the Bible's knowledge. So by controlling the past, you can determine the future. At the correct time in the future, now you're seeing it on the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, even the Sci-Fi Channel, the National Geographic Channel, all of the different channels that are related to ancient history or the coming World War III or any of the biblical Armageddon shows. It all goes back to this whole subject matter. So it's the Rosetta Stone of understanding history. And that's why, you guys, I spend thousands of pages and close to 10,000 footnotes. I said I have so many footnotes that if they were boots, you could march an army on the footnotes. I'm not trying to be clever. I'm just saying that's how much information's out there. In the United States, whenever anybody turns over or turns up a giant skeleton, we have the FBI or other government agencies immediately showing up to first threaten the people to go quiet and then take the stuff they turn up. Why are they doing that? Because they want to control the flow of information, and they want to take away all evidence so they can rewrite history as they see it, not as the Bible declares it to be. By lying and building an entire, if you will, false history about the truth of creation and the truth of cosmic war, meaning between the devil and his angels and God, the God of heaven, and his holy angels. The point is we are in an area of conflict, and what we're seeing right now in the Middle East, what we're seeing in our own country, I just got an email during the break that I guess New York is erupting now and a couple other cities in sympathy with Baltimore, and you have the mayor of Baltimore thanking ISIS, and you have her thanking the Nation of Islam, and, she's taking the heat for letting this thing get out of hand. Well, this is all orchestrated, you guys, because just as Shiva, going back to CERN, remember, Shiva is the destroyer of worlds. In the New World Order, globalist Illuminati mindset, everything that God had created has to be done away with, and in its place, the satanic counterfeit or replacement. And that's what we're seeing when you look up the skies and you remember the beautiful blue skies and normal cumulus clouds. Now we're dealing with blue skies that are instantly crisscrossed with chemtrails that are geoengineering. They're changing the very atmosphere. They're changing the oceans. By the way, if people don't get it, you're never going to get the truth in mainstream media. Fukushima was an extinction-level event that will play out beyond anybody's wildest imagination. And now you've got pretty much a third of the sea life dying, and the Pacific Ocean's about 30.9% of the, all the seas of the world. And if you take some of the areas that are frozen and melting, you get up to 33. Somebody took me to task because I said, well, it's a third of the sea. Well, they weren't taking, some of the inlets, and they weren't taking the area where the Pacific Ocean went. So let's just say this, that the animals, even that are the marine animals, the sea lions and the seals, this all has to do with what we're talking about tonight, are jumping out of the water, even in a desperate move to find something to eat, to steal fish. And I don't know if you saw that story where one of the sea lions literally stole the fish that the fisherman was holding. I guess somebody's going to take a picture and dragged him into the water. Did you see that story?
No, I did not, but it sounds like something we would cover. It sounds interesting.
Yep. And so the point is that most people cannot any longer answer the questions of what's going on in the world unless they take a supernatural worldview and understand the lateness of the hour as it specifically relates to Bible prophecy and as it specifically relates to a plan of control, the control of disinformation, to totally deceive mankind. And obviously, any student of Bible prophecy knows that's the time known as the Great Tribulation. And I think we're right at the cusp of that right now. And I think it's that people better understand that everything they've accepted as normal, everything they believed was the American way, is coming under attack because the American middle class pretty much funded and fueled the world with all of the companies. And remember, no big companies started big. They all started small. But now the oligarchs, so many of the billionaires have bought into the Luciferian plan. And look, they've been promised that they'll live forever. That's why longevity. That's why you look at the Drudge Report and there's so much stuff on living forever. And see, that's the thing they want to do. And isn't that the same lie that the serpent told Eve, ye shall not surely die?
Nashish.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, isn't it Nashish? He was depicted in Genesis 3, and it's serpent or shiny, I believe, is the Hebrew translation, if I remember right. Right?
Well, the bottom line is the serpent. But let me share this with you. That serpent and America, the very name America, and I can prove this. I've proved it. I've quoted all the experts from even the Spanish conquistadors' time. America was known to everyone in South and Latin America as Amaruca. Amaruca meant land of the plumed serpent, okay? Quetzalcoatl looks like the classic representation of a bipedal lizard that's 9 feet tall. So what's fascinating when you look at Kukulkan, all the names for the main god in the Aztec, Inca, and Mayan religion, the commonality of all of them was human sacrifice and cannibalism. And guess what? All the giants in both ancient times and even pre-creation times. When I say that, I'm talking about two creations: the initial creation of an angelic type civilization on the earth, from which we got Atlantis and all that stuff, and then the creation of Adam and Eve in God's likeness and image. Obviously, Satan had to spoil that. So these are laid out in my three most important books, I think, for people to grasp this, are True Legends, okay, Genesis 6 Giants, and Xenogenesis. Xenogenesis is spelled Xenogenesis, and that means having a third set of chromosomes. They're all available, ladies and gentlemen, on my website, stevequayle.com. And so what I'm trying to do, gentlemen, is leave an understanding for people that are going to be experiencing this stuff in a true heart failing series of events that I believe have already started.
Well, look at the animal-human hybrid program that seems to be popping up, or the conversation about it anyways. They're trying to pass a law in Georgia to prevent mermaids and chimera from being created. Isn't that similar to the impurity that the fallen angels bestowed upon the earth in the Book of Giants?
Say that again. I'm sorry. I missed that.
Oh, yeah. In Georgia, one of the officials, an assemblyman, actually is passing a law to prevent the making of chimeras or human-animal hybrids such as mermaids.
Oh, right. And it's already being done. It's already being done. It's already been done. Remember this. Anything they admit to, it already existed 50 years ago, okay? And what's fascinating to most people is they can't wrap their heads around that this is not necessarily new scientific knowledge. It's the old scientific knowledge that basically is coming back into the scene as these coming back on the scene. There's a thing called a hermeneuclus. Forget it. H-U-R-M-O-N-O-C-U-L-O-U-S, hermeneuclus, okay? Or kind of like another word for the human nucleus, that even the alchemists in the Middle Ages thought that they could create artificial life. So the point being is that this is something that's not new, and Atlantis, the ancient civilization of Atlantis, is basically known in history as the civilization that God judged when they started combining animal and human DNA. And a chimera, all of the biblical context, it talks about satyrs. It talks about centaurs. Most people don't know that. It talks about the lion men of Moab. It talks about behemoth. It talks about Leviathan. And because the cover-up has been so great, that I believe that God is going to lay out the evidence for mankind's duplicity, wickedness, and sin. And that's what I've been warning people about, that when it begins to happen, we're in the middle of it. We are in the middle of the times when all manner of evil, we're rebuilding a scientific Tower of Babel. And by the way, the word Hebrew gets translated from Eber. Eber was one of the only tribes that did not join in the building of the Tower of Babel. That's where you get the word Hebrew. And because of that, God let them keep the original tongue, the original language of the day. Now, that's a fascinating subject that people can look up easily on Wikipedia. But the point being is, now as we're approaching the end of the age, not the end of the world, but the end of the age, all these things hidden that have been hidden to control mankind are going to be revealed. So at that point, men and women can choose, do they want to believe a lie or do they want to believe the truth? Unfortunately, the majority will believe a lie.
I find that all fascinating. I actually found a video, a newsreel from Russia about a satyr in a mound being unearthed with a gigantic horse which had a very honorable burial ritual, and that was in the Crimea area. And I think the video was from a couple years ago. But people try to justify it, saying people are just throwing bones away and mixed human and animal bones. But I looked at it, and for the video they showed, looked like nothing like the satyr that you and I would depict in Greek mythology, but it did fit the definition. So it was very interesting.
Well, let me share this with you. There's so much sanitation of the truth, or there's just downright corruption that and to corrupt means to literally destroy, to ultimately take apart or cause to go to pieces, so to speak. The thing is, it's just like moral corruption. It's fascinating to me that as scientific corruption takes even a higher precedent in the headlines, that moral corruption comes along right with it. Now, I'll explain something to everybody. Diodorus, look him up, is one of the most interesting ancient historians, talking about the Celtic giants, declared that even though they had comely women giants, meaning they were good-looking giant women, that they preferred the sexual accompaniment of each other. So that's interesting that most people don't understand that was introduced to humanity. They weren't born with that. That's what the giants taught them. So, you can go back to a couple thousand years and go, oh, this is interesting. And what I've tried to do, you guys, I know we're running out of time pretty soon, but what I've tried to do is basically tie all the loose ends in history. I think I've done a very accurate job. I think I've done an interesting job. I think that if people will be honest and do their homework, I've done mine. I tell them, check out the footnotes. During the early years in the colonies, most people would be surprised to know this, but all of the founding fathers of the United States, from George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Atwood, all these guys, a lot of them that are the most Lincoln, they all believed in giants, even addressed the fact that they were bones. They had bones in their day. So that's all in my book, True Legends. And again, what happens is it's like this. It's kind of like being the ultimate historical detective, in the fact that you keep going back as you turn up new leads and you turn up new evidence and you turn up all these things. Then you get into a position where the singular picture is presented that there was a supernatural incursion into the human race, and the genetic structure of mankind, once created in the image and likeness of God, was tampered with, and Noah was perfect in his generations. Noah and the 8 souls on the ark were the only ones that didn't get corrupted. So when Jesus said, just as in the days of Noah, so would it be in these days leading up to the coming of the Son of Man, it's a genetic corruption. In other words, we're not futuristic. We're going back in the future, and as we go back into the future, forgive me, that means as ancient antiquity and all of the things that we're talking about tonight, gentlemen, that determines what we'll be dealing with in the future. So that's what I mean by back to the future. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. That which has been will be again.
Well, I think this is all fascinating, and in some ways it all ties back into ancient Babylonian mystery religion. Like, that was not originated there in Babylon, and I think that it goes a lot further back. Obviously Nimrod was so upset that God destroyed the world, he came up with the Great Conspiracy or the Great Plan and things of that nature. I think this is all fascinating information. The acronyms that are out there, we see ISIS and everything else. It just out there blatantly, esoterically for anyone to decipher. And I think you do a fantastic job of that, Steve. I can't say that enough. And I find it very interesting how, like you mentioned with the Babylonian towers, the Hebrew language was allowed to be kept because God confused everyone of their languages. So very interesting stuff, Steve. I really like that. If you want, for a couple minutes here, if you want to plug your stuff, what you're working on, and maybe your new YouTube channel, or Roku channel that may be coming out and things of that nature, feel free to do so.
Well, thank you. First of all, my website's SteveQuayle, QUAYLE.com. Over the course of my radio career, 25 years, I've been all over the place on the dial, from 3-hour talk shows at the beginning to pretty much doing shows like yours and Coast to Coast, and others now are Doug Hagman's, and on Hagman and Hagman, which, by the way, has got a huge following worldwide. It's important for people to understand that I'm not just sitting on my laurels writing books. We're out in the field, and we've got teams that go to different parts of the world, and what I'm trying to do is raise the money and get people to come on board with us that want to basically have an active hand in revealing the future. And I can tell you this, the more ancient stuff that we turn over, the more resistance we get. I know we're directly over target. So how does this affect everybody? Jesus said if we abide in him and his word abides in us, then we will know the truth, and the truth will set us free. The Illuminati, globalists, all of those who hate God want to keep you in the dark and feed you what I call vomit. Mainstream network news to me is nothing more than vomit brokering. You're not allowed to know any facts. You're only allowed to know regurgitated statements, and that's what you're to accept as reality. So anyway, the thing is that probably the most important book that I've written is the Genesis 6 Giants, the Revision 2, and then again, for those who are interested in ancient legends, all of the Stargates, the Smithsonian cover-up, that's in the book True Legends. And the cover of True Legends shows a giant that's running down buffalo, and absolutely the Native Americans all have these legends. Like, I chronicled the different Indian tribes, actually Native American tribes, and I basically draw it all together, and it's the same picture. And by the way, the Native Americans knew that Sasquatch, Yeti, whatever you want to call them, come through Stargates. And the interesting thing is it goes right back to sound. So if you go into the desert Southwest, you see a little guy playing a flute, Kokopelli, that's how typically you see a Stargate being illustrated in the sandstone or whatever it's carved into is with a spiral and that little guy playing a flute. So in essence, you guys, we've been led in by the Pied Piper of perdition to believe lies, and that's where we're at today.
That's fantastic, Steve. One last question for you. Do you think any time in the coming years that there will be a professionally agreed upon unearthing of a skeleton of maybe enormous dimensions?
I believe, well, let me share this. Yes, and I think you're even going to see something more. You're going to see the mummified revelation of an actual giant in stasis. Stasis is a form of suspended animation. And one of Russia's leading ophthalmological, there's a mouthful, surgeons, Dr. Ernst Moldeshev, literally was taken to the caves in Nepal where he saw and observed that. And the Tibetan monks told him, do not go past this line. If you go past this line, basically there's so much energy from, and again, a giant in stasis or suspended animation that your head will explode. Well, Dr. Moldeshev's a very bright man, and he just tried to get as close to that line as he could, and he literally experienced for himself the same thing that the monks had warned about. So Moldeshev is spelled Muldashev. So, you know, when I track down, in order to run with a story or to find a lead, I've got to have 3 independent people telling me the same thing. And, you know, the infamous Dulce, New Mexico alien wars, you'd be surprised how many giant skeletons. For instance, the Grand Canyon, 1918, an expedition, the Phoenix Gazette carried this story, Professor Kincaid, and the giant Egyptian sarcophaguses that they found in a temple structure in the Grand Canyon. Well, people poo-pooed that, even though the Phoenix Gazette carried it, and basically the Smithsonian did everything they could to cover that up. But one of the things they can't cover up is when people who have been involved in real expedition with secret government clearances come clean to clear their conscience on their deathbed. That's the time that we're going to see some stuff. And I believe that we're going to deal with reanimated giants in our day because that's what ruled the earth.
That's going to be really interesting, Steve, man. You are full of information. Awesome. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all this. We're just out of time.
Thank you.
It was awesome hearing from you, Steve. Everyone, Steve Quayle, author and researcher of many very important topics. Check him out, stevequayle.com. Thank you for tuning in to the rundownlive.com. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Truth Frequency Radio, guys. Check it out. We love everybody in the chat. Check out the new Waking Up Wisconsin magazine, wakingupwisconsin.com.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We are proud to bring you cutting-edge programs like The Kev Baker Show,
The Christopher Everard Show,
The Freedom Link with Joe Joseph,
Truth Frequency with Chris and Sherry Gio,
Red Pill Reports
with J.D. Moore,
X Squared with Brooks Agnew,
Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye,
Freaky Friday
with The Woo Crew,
Waking Up the Masses
with Robert Bruce,
Phoenix Rising Radio,
and dozens more.
Did you know you can listen from any computer, mobile device, or from any telephone by dialing 832-225-5308.
Or call into your favorite show toll-free at 866-37-TRUTH.
Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media.
24 hours a day.
Truth Frequency Radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.